Well, should I should I start?
Yes, you can.
Welcome to another insightful YouTube live session hosted by ICHARS in collaboration with Emoticons India. At ICHARS, we are dedicated to empowering mental health practitioners with advanced coaching and therapeutic skills to enable them to create a lasting impact in the field of mental health. Through our training programs, in initiatives like Visit MHP and collaborative efforts, we strive to make a mental health support more accessible and effective. Today's session brings together two esteemed organizations, iChart and Emoticons India, to understand needs to belong and belongingness. We are hosted to have Nitin Shah, the visionary behind iCharts, who has been instrumental in integrating hypnosis and coaching into therapeutic practices, and joining him is Ms. Shruti Bose. She has MSc Clinical Psychology, PGCCP, and a counselor at Emoticons India and a member of WICCI Council. Together, they shed light onto the psychological complexities of eating disorders and how different therapeutic approaches can support recovery. Stay tuned for an engaging and enlightening discussion. Now, coming to the questions, Nitin sir, can you tell us what does a sense of belonging really mean in the context of mental health and therapy? Um, sir?
I think he got dropped off.
Uh, okay, so coming to a question for you, ma'am. Can you tell us why is belonging considered a basic psychological need right alongside food, safety, and love?
So, we are all social creatures. We thrive on connection. We are wired for connection. And I think that we always want to feel accepted, loved, cared for, which is why it is considered a very important psychological need. According to Abraham Maslow, if you heard of the need hierarchy, where Abraham Maslow puts the need to belong before self-esteem and self-actualization needs, which also says how we make so much of sense of who we are based on how accepted, loved we feel. So it is considered quite crucial. We understand how much we are able to bring to the table, what's happening around us based on the need to belong, and hence I think it's an important need.
Okay, that was a wonderful answer. Can you tell us how does a lack of belonging manifest in a client's thought, emotions, or behavior?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you for bringing it up. There are different ways in which it comes forward. As clients, I've noticed this tendency that they tend to internalize these thoughts. We have this habit of internalizing it, so sometimes it comes off as I'm not good enough, I'm too much, they will not like me, I need to change something about me. So it becomes like I am the problem, where then there are feelings like loneliness that comes forward, shame, guilt, a lot of sadness, disappointment at our own selves. And because of this, I would say some common behaviors that I've noticed that gets manifested are people pleasing tendencies. We tend to do anything and everything to please others. We put others before our own selves. Sometimes we move towards overachieving. We want to do things again to overachieve so that other people think we are good and they accept us then. So somewhere we are also giving the other person more power, and that also causes us to use a lot of self blame statements. So this is how it comes forward, in my opinion. And I think in today's world, I've been noticing this a bit more, especially in the therapy space. A lot of individuals tend to bring forward these internalized thoughts and talk about how they feel like, okay, they don't belong, and there's something that they need to do from their end to change. But I think we don't realize how, when it comes to connections, when it comes to building relationships, it's also a two-way street. While, of course, we are bringing things to the table, it's also a lot about how much is reciprocated. So, yeah, that's, I think, something that comes up.
So, hello both of you, and hello everyone else. Disha, Shruti, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
sir.
Okay,
Hi,
I'm
Nitin.
really sorry. Give me 2 more minutes. I'm having some difficulty all of a sudden with my camera. So just give me 2 more minutes and I'll join again. You can carry forward this conversation, and I would join in a couple of moments.
Sure.
Okay, sir. Uh, so,
Thank
Shruti
you.
ma'am, can you give us a quick introduction about yourself while we wait
Yeah.
for Nitin, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a counseling psychologist. I'm also a counselor at Emoticons India. I've been practicing for 3 years now. As a counseling psychologist, I work with a lot of interpersonal and intrapersonal related issues. And I also focus a lot on community building, because I believe that while individual work is important, working in groups also plays a very important role. So I hold support circle conversations also. That's a little bit about me. And I'm currently based in Calcutta.
Thank you so much for telling us about yourself. Um, for our next question, can you tell us, are there any specific population or client groups that are more vulnerable to experiencing chronic disconnection or lack of belonging?
Hmm, I'd say yes. I think majorly because there's a lot of in-group and out-groups that tend to happen, where it about where we think we are also fitting in. For example, I would say there are marginalized groups where the representation might be very less. So it might feel like, okay, there's not enough of us present here. It might feel like we're an outsider there. So a lot of marginalized groups. Again, I would say a lot of people who might not be able to relate to the majority in terms of if they've gone through traumatic experiences, that somewhere sidelines them. Or at the same time, I would say neurodivergent individuals who are typically put a lot in neurotypical settings, and then it becomes very difficult. Of course, right now with awareness, things are improving, but even say I work with a lot of people who've maybe migrated, and they feel like, okay, there are only one or two of them out there, so it becomes very difficult to feel like they belong there. So for these groups specifically, they're very vulnerable to feel that they don't belong here. So yeah, that's what I've noticed.
Thank you so much. Can you tell us what are some unconscious beliefs that client struggles with belonging often hold, and how can these be gently challenged?
Hmm. Um, Again, I would say some unconscious beliefs are very similar to. Hi, Nitin.
Hello, thank you for taking this forward without me. I don't know, all of a sudden something went wrong with my camera.
Not
Anyways,
a
please
problem.
continue.
Glad you're here. I was just answering a question. Shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Some of the unconscious beliefs, I think, are very similar to what I just mentioned, in terms of we internalize that, okay, I am the problem, I'm not good enough. Um, when we internalize this, that there's something that I need to change about myself, we don't realize that we are looking at it from a self blame, self deprecating belief. We try to challenge this as much as possible, but I personally think it's also a journey. It's not easy. It's a lot of unlearning that has to happen along the way, because there's conditioning that's involved that makes us look at this. A lot of things that we've picked up while we move forward in life that makes us think that, okay, I'm not worthy here. So self worth issue comes forward. So again, it's a journey where there are different therapeutic modalities that we can use also for that.
That was such a wonderful answer. Next question is for Nitin sir. Can you tell us what does a sense of belonging really mean in the context of mental health and therapy?
Audible now?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm not sure what's happening with my system today. All of a sudden, it seems to be working 5 till 10. Right. So, asking something?
Yes, sir. Can you tell us what does a sense of belonging really mean in the context of mental health and therapy? Excuse me, sir.
I think there's a network issue.
Yeah. While we wait for him, another question for you, ma'am.
Yeah,
Can a
sure.
strong sense of belonging improve self worth and emotional resilience over time? If so, how?
Hmm. I really think it can, like I was saying, right? We make sense of who we are based on a lot of other things that are happening around us. I like using this metaphor a lot, and I'd like to share that right now. Earlier, and I think even now, we often, when we order in pizza, we get pizza with that table in the middle, the triangle table that often comes with Domino's, Pizza Hut. So if we look at that as self, and each pizza slice has different life areas, we'll see how important the role is of that table, because the table is trying to make sure that all the pizza slices stay together. It tries to ensure that, for example, all the toppings are in place. And that's how we make sense of ourselves also, of different life areas. Are one pizza slice is say work, one is relationship, so on and so forth, right? So that's how we are able to make better sense of ourselves. So it does impact our self-worth. It has an impact on how I feel about myself. If I have people around me who make me feel like, wait, I am a part of this. It's not just about being present. I think also it's about being felt that, okay, I'm a part of this. Then that way I will see myself as, okay, I'm a nice person. People would like to be around me. If I'm not a part of certain groups, if I'm made to feel like an outsider, then I will come down to certain conclusions about myself. But again, like I said, it's a journey. It's something that I can't tell someone one day and from next day they will be able to practice that. Again, it's a lot of unlearning of how we think about ourselves, about challenging our thoughts. It's about realizing that, okay, some thoughts are also assumptions that we're making about ourselves. Often we can also question these thoughts by checking if there is proper evidence of these thoughts. If there are evidence, we see what we can do that is in our control. Something that I use a lot, again, in my therapy settings, is to understand what at the end of the day is in my control. We try our best to focus on that. What is something that I can influence? Again, knowing that there are boundaries with that, and things that we can't cope with, things that are out of our control, are things that we need to learn to cope with. So again, using these different techniques is a way of also building on self-love. Self-love also helps in making us feel like, okay, I can be a part of this also. How we feel about ourselves has an impact that way.
Okay,
That
so
was
now I
such an
seem to be back.
awesome and wonderful answer. Thank you so much. So, the next question is for Nitin sir. What does a sense of belonging really mean in the context of mental health and therapy?
So sense of belonging would predominantly mean this sense that I'm accepted, I am acknowledged, um, I'm not being judged, and that I have a space for myself, right? And this is not necessarily about whether people around me are accepting me or not, because there are situations where you come across people where they would tell you that everyone around me loves me, and yet I don't feel belong. So it's both about whether I have the environment in which there's enough acceptance, acknowledgement, and everything available, and also how I feel in that particular environment. These two things together would be what I would call a sense of belongingness. It's context in therapy, both. At some places, I need to learn to be able to create boundaries, to be able to communicate clearly to people around me, uh, how I would want them to be so that I can feel belonged and accepted. And then there are also places where I can't really change people outside of me. So, how do I work with my perception, my understanding of the current situation that I'm in, to be able to recognize that there are different ways in which people accept you? And it may not necessarily be in the way in which I want them to accept me. And then lastly, in case I'm in a situation where people don't really accept me, and it's evident from uh, based on facts and not based on my assumptions, then I also need to be able to prioritize myself and take steps required to be able to move out of that space and create a new space for myself. So, in the context of therapy, it could mean a lot of things.
Thank you so much. That was a really amazing answer. Can you tell us how does a lack of belonging manifest in clients' thoughts, emotions, or behavior?
So, Disha, can you repeat that question again?
Sorry. How does a lack of belonging manifest in a client's thoughts, emotions, or behavior?
And this question is for,
For you, sir.
acha, for me. Okay. Uh, so, how does this manifest in terms of thoughts, feelings, and emotions? Think of it this way, right? If you're in a situation where you feel you don't belong, then in terms of behavior, would you like to be in a space like that or would you like to avoid that space? Preferably, you would like to avoid that space. When you have to go to a place where you feel you don't belong, what would your feelings be? Would you feel happy going to that place or would you feel uncomfortable going to that place? Be about going to that place. So, generally speaking, when people don't feel belong, the one of the first thoughts that they have is that I don't want to go over there. What's the point of going? No one understands me over there. No one likes me over there. And these thoughts would then lead to certain feelings of one is not belonging. Second could be a sense of loneliness. Third could be a sense of irritation, frustration. Why are people asking me to go to a place where I don't belong? And then eventually I would prefer to avoid it as far as possible. And if I can't, then I will go, but my responses will not be the ones that people around would probably prefer.
Can you tell us how do issues of identity like race, gender, caste, or sexual orientation intersect with belonging in therapy? This question is for Nitin, sir.
See, so it is right when you are with a set of people who dress like you, who talk like you, who have similar interests, then the chances are you would feel more belonged in that particular group. Again, I'm saying chances because there are obviously possibilities where you may have everything perfect externally and yet you feel that you don't belong. But in general, familiarity with something would give you a greater chance of feeling that you belong. I'll give you an example. Okay. So, I'm generally not someone who is the religious type. I believe in God, but I have my own definition and understanding of God. Having said that, on major incidences or major festivals, be it Eid or be it Diwali, I would visit different places of worship. Right. So I was so during one of the Eids, I was supposed to go to the mosque. I was wearing a white kurta pajama, and when I was on the road, for a moment, I felt everyone is looking at me because I felt out of place. That's not generally who I am, right? And wherever I am, the location that I was going through, people were not dressed the way I was dressed, right? Now, was it really about those people? The answer is no. They were going about their normal day. On any other day, if I was not wearing that dress, if it was any other day, I wouldn't have even thought about it for a moment, right? Then all of a sudden, when I reached the mosque and I saw everyone being dressed in the way I was dressed, for that particular moment, I felt okay. I belong here right now. They will like me in that moment, right? On the other hand, on any other day, when if I'm going to a mosque where I'm not dressed that particular way, in the mosque I would feel out of place, right? It would feel as if okay, so not just emotionally. So there is one where whether I emotionally belong to that place or not, but physically you have a feeling that all right, you don't belong here right now. At least this is not the way you should be here. And then the extension of that happens. Will people be looking at me? Will they be judging me? Why am I dressed this way? And then the rest follows. So when you are in a group of people, whether it's your race, whether it's your culture, um, whether it's interest groups, you do generally feel a sense of belongingness, or at least you have a greater possibility of experiencing a sense of belongingness. Disha, Disha, are you there? Shruti, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you,
All
Nitin.
right. So today we seem to be having issues with internet in some form or the other. I'll get on to the next question, and then you can take up the next question. Would that be okay, Shruti?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Oh, super.
I think Disha's back.
Disha, so the next question.
Oh no.
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
so are there specific population or client groups more vulnerable to experiencing chronic disconnection or lack of belonging?
I actually answered this a while ago, and I would say yes. There are like again, I was talking in terms of in groups and out groups. Like you also just said, Nitin. I think the cues around us play an important role in our environment. When we see certain things happening, where we check in with ourselves and see, okay, am I fitting in here, or am I not fitting in here, and then we come down to conclusions. So when it comes to specific groups, again, I would say marginalized groups are sometimes when there's only one or two, a very minorities present in a specific setting, that's when it's felt even more. I've noticed this even with my clients where um, they feel like okay, they don't belong and they don't know how to fit in because there is maybe some form of discrimination taking place. So that's definitely still a part of reality in today's world.
Super. And again, just to take that a bit forward, this is not necessarily that people around these minorities are making them feel out
Yeah.
of place. So it's not necessarily that there are people who are going out of their way to make you feel that you don't belong. At times, it's just that because you feel unfamiliar, you feel that these people are very different from me. So the
Yeah.
next extension is that they don't understand me because they're different from me. And if they don't understand me, they are not like me, then what am I doing over here? So many a times, a lot of this is actually about what's happening in our head and not as much as what's happening outside us. While obviously what's happening outside us can also contribute to it.
It's a mix, I would say. It's a mix of both.
Oh, Nisha, are we back?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry about that.
Not an issue.
Ma'am, can you tell us in what ways can a therapist create a sense of belonging for their clients, especially in the early sessions?
Hmm. Um, I would say one thing that we should definitely keep in mind is the rapport helps a lot. But again, a very important goal for us as therapists is to make sure that our clients don't get dependent on the space. Our goal is also to extend that support beyond the space in a way they are able to create that environment around them. So to do that, I also believe in the here and now, to believe how the setting with the client, the relationship, the therapeutic alliance can also play a big role. So just starting off there, where I would say being present with the client, being curious about what they have to say, also letting them know that the relationship we are getting into is also a relationship. At the end of the day, it's a professional relationship, but making them feel like, okay, you matter. I am here to listen to you. I will not judge you. I will give you validation. I am also present with you. Are certain ways in which we begin the journey. And I think that at the end of the day, the goal is then to help them through the journey to make sure that they are able to apply the same thing outside it, where maybe through therapy they are able to understand the relationships better. They're able to understand what they are contributing to it. They're able to work on their relationship with themselves. And when that they are in in a comfortable part in the journey, they start applying it outside the space. So that works wonderfully. And yeah, that's something I'd like to say.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful answer. Uh, Sir, can the therapeutic alliance itself act as a belonging anchor for clients who feel isolated or rejected?
So yes, like Shruti mentioned, right, that eventually this is also a relationship. Now, in this relationship, if the client has to be comfortable sharing what their challenges are, they would need to, at some level, feel that I belong in this conversation that I'm having with the therapist. So, the therapeutic alliance plays an extremely important role. It can become an anchor for the client to at least begin to experience what a sense of belongingness is. For many clients, when they come to us for sessions, um, the interaction with the therapist may actually be the first major experience that they've had where they would tell you that this is for the first time that I really feel that I belong, that someone actually paid attention to me, that someone was willing to listen to me, right? So, yes, therapeutic alliance can itself play an important role. But again, like Shruti mentioned earlier, that the idea is to help the client create a space for themselves and not get dependent on the therapeutic alliance. It should not so happen that the client eventually ends up feeling that the only time I feel belonged or a sense of belongingness is when I'm in a therapy session. Because then they would constantly keep coming back for therapy only because that's where they're experiencing a sense of belongingness. So it's also important for us to be able to create that separation where the therapeutic alliance becomes a starting point, but eventually the client learns how to experience a sense of belongingness in the variety of situations that they are a part of. Right? And for that, like I said, I will go back to what we discussed earlier. The first will be if they are able to observe that people around them are actually creating an environment where they should feel belong and yet they're not feeling belong, then what is that void, what is that emptiness inside them that is causing this feeling of not belonging, right? If people externally are not able to create that environment, or if there are actually things that are happening in the environment that make you feel out of place, then one, being able to communicate that clearly, and then if required also having the skills and the capabilities to be able to move out of that space if that space really is not conducive for your well-being and your growth. So all of this will become a part of the clients through therapeutic alliance, eventually creating and experiencing a sense of belongingness for themselves.
That was a wonderful answer. The next question is for ma'am. Oh, just a second. I'm so sorry. Are group therapy or support circles effective in cultivating belonging, and what makes them work?
Hmm. Um, I really do believe in group work. And like I was saying a while ago, also that along with individual work, I think group settings play such a big role because communities help us look at shared experiences a lot. Helps us realize that wait, I'm not alone in feeling this. What often happens is that when we come into these settings or when we have these feelings and thoughts initially, we think that, okay, only I'm having these thoughts, something is wrong with me. We internalize it. Group settings makes us realize that, wait, this is a shared experience. And with shared experience, we get to hear other people's perspectives on it. We get to understand what's maybe helping them, what's not helping them. Then we can also focus on accountability over there. I've actually done some support circles in the past on loneliness, where I was really surprised to see that people are also coming forward to have this conversation, which is, I would say, the very first step. That courage to come forward and have this conversation, to be aware that, okay, this is something I'm experiencing, but also knowing that with the support around me, with like minded individuals, and more I talk about it, we'll be able to figure it out maybe. Again, it's not about completely letting go of the feeling sometimes it's about knowing that, okay, I am feeling this, but how can I also sit with this feeling? In group settings, I would say specifically I've seen how creative processes also help. Expressive arts, for example, is a wonderful way to navigate all this with many people, almost like say 6 to 8 people together. It's a good number to start just to figure it out. So I've seen it worked wonderfully, both group therapy and support circles.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very informative. The next question is for Sir. How does fostering a sense of belonging help reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, or trauma related disorders?
Okay, so just before I come to that, to add to the previous answer, remember, most of us feel that our problems are unique to us, okay? And that I'm the only one struggling and suffering with this. So, one of the most amazing things about a group session, it is well designed, which has a clearly defined objective. So, like Shruti mentioned about loneliness. So, most people feel I'm the only one who is so lonely. Now, when you're a group of people who are all feeling the same degree of loneliness, you no longer feel lonely because you realize I'm not alone, right? So that by itself becomes a thought provoking moment for them to realize that, all right, I am not alone in this. And then, second, the fact that I don't belong means there's no one who is going through something similar to what I'm going through. And therefore, no one can understand me. So, the moment there are so many people that I'm having an interaction with, all of whom probably going through a similar set of circumstances, not exactly the same, but there will be certain similar nuances that will come up. So you all of a sudden start realizing that, all right, I am not alone in this. So I belong. At least I belong with a group of people who feel that they don't belong. Right? And that is a very powerful generalization buster. When you're working with clients in therapy, one of the biggest problems we face is the fact that people generalize. I'm always alone. Now, when you say I'm always alone, and if the client cannot come up with an exception, then it's very difficult for you to have a conversation with them unless you are willing to confront them. And generally speaking, I would avoid confrontation because वैसे client is which are feeling not understood, feeling uncomfortable, and then you end up confronting them, and it has the potential to go on a different track altogether. But when the client is in a group setting, so at least they realize, all right, so I belong in a group of people who feel they don't belong. So that helps them break that generalization that I don't belong anywhere, right? And therefore, group work can be very powerful. Plus, group work has its own energy. So when you end up doing expressive work, when you end up doing guided meditations, you will realize that the energy of the group adds to the work that you would have otherwise done on a one-to-one basis. So that's another component of it. And lastly, a lot of people who experience a sense of loneliness or the experience that I don't belong, they will also tell you that I find it difficult to make friends. So by them being in a group where they can talk to people, for all you know, they may end up making lifelong friends over there. So that also becomes a factor that contributes to how things change, right? Now, coming to your question, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, sir. How does fostering a sense of belonging help reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, or trauma related disorders?
So when I feel I don't belong, I can't even seek help from people. If I find it difficult to seek help from people, then whatever problems I have, I'm the only one facing them. So all of a sudden, the problems become bigger than what they are because I am the only one who can face them, who is facing them, and I can't even seek help. That it itself will have a potential to create a sense of anxiety and a feeling of overwhelm. So the moment you start working with that sense of belongingness, the anxiety that was triggered because I felt I don't belong gets taken care of. And then the anxiety, which was a result of me not being able to seek help from people, right? Also starts getting addressed because now I can go out and seek help from people. Now I can actually meet people, interact with people, and all of this can then contribute to my ability to manage the situation more effectively, right? As far as trauma is concerned, so me not feeling belonged may itself be a result of some trauma that I've gone through in the past, right? Or it is also possible that right now, being in a new situation altogether where I feel I don't belong, limits my ability to deal with the trauma that I've gone through earlier. So it can be both. Trauma may be a cause, the effect of which could be the feeling that I don't belong, and the lack of belongingness could actually become the cause that makes the symptom of trauma more exaggerated because I don't know how to cope up with it. I don't have the support system required to be able to deal with it and cope up with it. So the relationship can be both causal and effective.
Okay. Another question, sir. What therapeutic techniques like part works, inner child healing, role plays, etc., are helpful in rebuilding a sense of belonging?
Okay, so I'll tell you how I would work with the sense of belonging, right? Because that becomes easier. Uh, I would begin through this standard model that we have to help the client define the problem in the IFL statement. So generally, the client will define it as I feel lack of belongingness about interaction that I have with people when I have to interact with people, or they will have their own version of this statement, right? Then the I wish statement. What is the outcome that you would like to achieve? I wish I could feel that I belong somewhere. I wish I can find the place where I belong, right? Then comes the future part. And the reason why future becomes very important when it comes to belongingness is because when you ask people to define what does belongingness mean to you, many times people don't have an answer for that. So if they don't know what a sense of belongingness means to them, or if they are at least not able to define a hypothetical, then even if they're in a situation like that, how do they recognize it? How do they realize that at times it's not about what's happening externally, but what's happening internally? And then you know you need to work internally. So I would like the client to define what that future looks like, where they feel a sense of belongingness, both in terms of the external environment and what are their body language, their expressions, what kind of conversations they are having with people, which is an indicator that they belong. Once we know that future, right, then we go back to what are the current places where you don't feel belong, and what are the steps that you need to take to feel belonged. Now, this is a bit tricky when I say what are the steps that you need to take because really there are no steps for you to feel belonged. Well, if the situation is good the way they are, it's just an internal feeling. And generally, clients don't have a task list to figure out how do I feel belonged, right? So, if there are things that the client can do, for example, the client may say, you know what, I need to develop certain skills. I go to this group of people. They all have a tendency to talk about sports. I don't like sports, so I feel out of place over there. So then either I need to help the client figure out, okay, if you don't like sports, what do you like, and can we help you find a group of people who have a common interest like you have, and then as a result, you may feel a stronger sense of belongingness over there. At least you will feel more comfortable visiting that place. Or would you like to learn more about sports? Would you like to develop interest in sports? Because some people may want to develop their interest. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that I don't understand it. So if I could understand it, maybe I can carry forward a conversation. There are other things that they talk about which are very interesting for me. So to be able to help them figure out what those skills are that are required for them to be able to at least be able to have that conversation in that group that they are going to. Then comes the last part. In spite of all of this, I don't feel belonged. Okay. Now is where our actual work starts. So if everything else externally seems fine, and yet I'm feeling a sense of lack of belongingness, then what's happening? Begin with thought restructuring, which will be the straightforward first step to follow. Again, how would we do thought restructuring? I would ask the client that when you're in a situation like this, what should your first thought be, which will at least make you feel comfortable enough. And then use when then statements to be able to help them restructure those thoughts. Add anchoring, which will be like conditioning that feeling of belongingness. But it's just that for anchoring to work, clients should have experienced a sense of belongingness somewhere in the past. So I can borrow that feeling from the past, anchor it, and condition it to the new set of triggers that the client has. But mostly for lack of belongingness, this is not what will be enough. This will this will be like patchwork. We would need to explore the underlying causes that are driving this lack of belongingness. And that generally would require some degree of delayering. So we may use free associations, we may use self-validation and integration therapy, we may use corrective therapy. We have a series of delayering processes available. We could simply use questioning models to help the client explore and understand what the underlying cause for that lack of belongingness is. Eventually, they would reach certain experience in the past where this lack of belongingness got triggered. And then from there, I would move into what you mentioned earlier, either parts work or inner child integration or regression, but really they are all variations of one another. Eventually, what you are doing is helping the client connect back to the starting point of the problem, connect with that part of them that experienced the problem, help the part recognize that they are not alone, help the part release that feeling, whatever they are stuck with, help the client give that confidence to the part or to the child that the part is important, and then continue with inner child integration or parts integration, whichever route you want to take, right? And then help the client experience a future and see in future if things are beginning to change. So overall, I would do all of this with the client so that they are able to address that sense of that issue of not belonging or feeling that they don't belong anywhere.
That was such an
Uh,
informative answer. Sorry.
Sorry. So let me just chunk it down because I've spoken a lot, so it becomes easier step by step. Define the problem, define the outcome, describe the future, identify the triggers, start with when then statements and anchoring, at least have them in place so that you can use them later on. Delay, post delayering, either inner child or regression or parts work, whichever is most suitable based on delayering. And once you've done all of that, then future pacing with the same situations where they earlier felt they don't belong in combination with when then statement and anchoring. And that should more or less cover up the entire issue that the client is experiencing.
So the next question is for ma'am. What role does digital belonging, such as online communities, social media, play, and can it be therapeutic or damaging?
So we are clearly living in such a digital world today. We are also dependent on the digital spaces, and I would say there are pros and cons for that. Of course, with more accessibility, there are more communities out there that we can reach out to. Especially, I'd say that a lot of people might be in certain locations or in geographical locations where they don't have access to people easily. So the online setting helps you get connected to people easily at your own comfort zone. But again, it's important to remember there are cons to that also. The fact that in online digital spaces, we end up comparing a bit more. For example, we might just open Instagram. We might see someone else post about their success, and then we'd feel like, okay, something wrong with me. Or maybe they've attended a party and we've not been invited for it. Then we internalize that. We feel like, okay, again it comes down to that self blame aspect. So I would say when it comes to digital spaces, it's important to know how to use it. It's important to be educated about the right way of using it. Of course, use it because there are so many pros to it, but the way of using it will be beneficial. So that is very important. Again, there's so many communities out there in the online spaces. It could be, say for example, gaming communities, where if that's your interest, that's something that's there for you. Or if other value aligned communities where maybe you have certain interests, and you will find people more easily, again, maybe in your country, outside your country, in your city, outside your city. So that is definitely helpful, but again, you need to know your limit to that, because you should not fall under the trap of where you again go into that spiral of internalizing and blaming yourself. So yeah, that's something that I've also noticed. So it's important to be mindful about that.
That was such a wonderful answer. The next question is for Nitin sir. How does therapist help clients build belonging outside of therapy room in their families, communities, or workplace?
Okay, so I'm now going to repeat myself based on what I had said earlier, right? So there are this, right? If I have a group of people around me with whom I don't feel belong, what is stopping me from feeling belong? Either there is something that is happening in my environment with these people, which is making me feel that I don't belong. In which case, I would need to communicate this to them. So a therapist can help the client develop the skills required to be able to clearly articulate and communicate exactly what they expect from people around them. Now, that will be one. Second, let's assume for a moment that whatever they are expecting, in spite of being communicated clearly, is still not being fulfilled by those people around them. Right? In that case, what is the best that the client can do? So if that particular environment is not conducive for them, they need to still be able to create an alternate environment that will be conducive for them. So to be able to find friends, to be able to find groups, whether it's online, offline, where they can communicate, they can connect with people, and they can feel that they belong. This is not to say that they necessarily need to leave everyone else who they don't feel belonged with. Because there are situations and places where you can't avoid certain things. You're a social being. There are others who may not do what you expect them to do. But if I have a set of people who I can't avoid, but they are not willing to create an environment where I feel belong, then wouldn't it become my responsibility to find an alternate environment where I can feel belong, to have that right set of friends, to again be able to identify this, to be able to find those friends, to develop the skills to go out and interact with people, to find like minded people, will be an additional thing that the therapist can help them do. And then lastly, like I said, there are places where everything else is working out exactly the way it should. And still I don't feel belong. So that's where the deeper therapeutic work will come as to what is preventing me from being able to experience this sense of belongingness while the environment seems to be conducive. And that's where deeper emotional work would be required from a therapist point of view.
That was a wonderful answer. The next question is again for Nitin sir. Have you ever had a client express a breakthrough moment when they finally felt seen or accepted? What shifted for them after that?
Okay, so there are a lot of clients. Actually, to be fair, almost every client at some level or the other, when they are working with us, would tell us that there's something unique about the work that we do. That there are things that they've shared with us that they've never shared with anyone else. Or many a times that they are feeling a sense of belongingness because we did not ask them to share something that everyone asked them to share. Right? So there are quite a few clients like that. Uh, how does that impact them? It makes them realize that there are multiple ways of experiencing a sense of belongingness. And that almost becomes like a seed which we can then nurture to help them expand that feeling of belongingness to other areas of their life.
Now,
Right?
coming
And
to
in
our
terms of
last
what changed for
question,
them,
which is
sorry. And in terms of what changed for them, during the therapy session itself, right? You will notice there are times when clients come, initially they are seeking help, therefore they've come to us, right? And yet they are very reserved, they have these boundaries around them, they are very circumspect about everything that they speak and how they are speaking. They are almost measuring every word to check whether you would listen to them or are you judging them, right? And the moment they start experiencing that sense of belongingness, you literally notice their body language changing, their expressions changing. You will notice their interactions with you after that changing, well, to an extent where before the process, the client literally did not even want to say hi. And at the end of the process, the client is actually telling you, "Acha, next session, what can we start with a smile on their face?" So there could be a huge transition that can happen during the course of that one session also. And the clients experience those shifts, and then obviously after that, therapy becomes relatively easier from a therapist point of view, because once the client is there, they're looking up to you, you have that alliance with them, they have that rapport with you. The rest of the work becomes easier, especially now that we use hypnosis. For us, the time required to help the client induce an hypnotic state reduces dramatically simply because of the trust and the alliance.
Now, coming to our last question, which is for both of you. What can therapists do when they themselves feel a lack of belonging within their own profession, community, or team?
Okay, shall I go first?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for bringing this question up because this is also so important. I think we as therapists also feel this so often, especially speaking from my personal journey. It's been isolating in this journey, maybe majorly because my work is also online. So it's realizing that, okay, do I feel alone in this entire journey of figuring it out? It's about me taking certain decisions and not knowing what's right or wrong. I would say the thing that's really helped me is honestly acknowledging that I'm feeling like this first, which again is not, it's easier said than done. It's not easy to actually acknowledge it, but just being able to recognize, okay, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's happening, is a kind of a self care check in with myself also. I've acknowledged that both by going to therapy myself, talking about it, by going to supervision, by talking about it. And while I've acknowledged it, I've been able to find safe spaces where I think I felt seen and heard. Building communities with other therapists, finding other therapists who are also going through this, figuring out what's working for them, figuring out what's working for me, sharing that. I think having those shared values together is something that's helped me a lot, and a lot of grounding also. For example, right now I'm also trying to ground myself while talking to you all. I'm holding a stress ball, and so small techniques which also helps me connect to my body. Because while we were talking and while Nitin was sharing the different modalities, something I'd like to add to that and that might help here is that while of course it's a lot of cognitive restructuring, talking about it also, I think it's a lot of body work also because of the mind and body connection. So grounding myself, checking in with how my body feels, how does my mind feel, has helped me. So I think these are some techniques that I'd say helps a lot of other therapists also after having a conversation with them. So yeah.
So that's actually a good place for me to go on a little rant to begin with first, and then we will come back to the answer that I'm about to give. So sadly, we are in a field where we have too many internal conflicts, and that actually creates a lot of frustration for practitioners. For example, uh, many psychiatrists will dish clinical psychologists saying that there is no point of going for therapy, only medicine works. Clinical psychologists will dish counseling psychologists saying that counseling psychologists, people don't know what they are doing. Counseling psychologists who have done counseling psychology from full-time masters will dish counseling psychologists who have done counseling psychology from distance education. Counseling psychologists who have done distance education will dish coaches. And then coaches and therapists will dish psychiatrists saying that, you know what, they give medication for everything and they don't know what they're doing. And it's sad because each of us have our own space, each of us have our own place, right? And we are not willing to give that. We go out and talk about helping people experience a sense of belongingness, but we are not willing to give space to people who are working in our own profession. So, one, that's sad, but that's how it is right now. Okay. So, one. Second, partially, if you were to ask me, a lot of this is also because of our education system and post education training. When So, chalo, I understand education. You are a part of a master's program. You completed the master's program. I'm sure your colleges would have an alumni. Whether you stay connected to them, don't stay connected to them is a personal choice. So, I that part I still understand, right? So they've probably limited the things that the college can do over here. But after college, when practitioners attend different skill development courses, all people of who are creating the skill development courses understand this, right? When I created or when we created CHP, before creating CHP, we went through the same journey that every psychology student goes through. We experienced the same sense of loneliness, that same sense of feeling that I don't know what I'm doing with the client, that feeling that the master's education did not prepare us enough, that maybe people in my family don't understand the kind of work that I do, I can't talk to them. My friends don't really understand what I do and they are expecting me to give them solutions for everything, right? And I can't seek solutions from anyone. So all of these challenges, all of these training institute creators have also gone through. So when they develop training programs, why don't they accommodate all of these things as a part of their training program? Yeah. So for those of you who don't know us, as a part of what we do with CHP, there was a reason why we decided to break CHP into a 4-level program, which takes around a year and a half. The reason is this, because if you're starting with us, it's not a 2-day journey. If you're a psychologist, we expect you to be there with us for a year and a half. While each level is complete in itself and all of that is fine, but the expectation is this. The reason is this, because once you complete level 1, there would be places where you'll get stuck. And then you will come back to us for questioning. Therefore, there is a very flourishing community where we offer 1.5 year fellowship program completely free for students. Why? For this reason. There are mentors who are assigned to all students who are part of fellowship. Why? Because we know that you will experience a sense of frustration, that sense of loneliness, that people around me don't understand what I'm going through. Right? So here's my request to all these organizations that offer training programs. Please ensure that you offer a place to your students where they can come back to you and they can connect with you. Don't make it this way that once you have done a workshop with us, you are at your own end. Their problems don't resolve after attending a program with you. Their problems resolve by implementing the solutions or the skills that they've learned in your program, and they will need help and guidance and support for that. So please be there for them and support them. Right? For students who are psychologists, when you attend a training program, please don't attend a training program looking at its cost. Okay, don't attend a training program looking at who is. I have seen training programs being promoted by celebrities who have nothing to do with psychology. And people go and attend those programs because it's celebrity endorsed that program. What does that celebrity know about psychology? So be careful about what kind of programs you're selecting. See if you can talk to the trainers. Check if those people have a follow-up community in place where after the workshop is over, you can regularly engage, connect with the group of other people who have done training programs with the same institute. Right? Nowadays, there are also these peer learning communities that are coming up. I think Mind Peers is one, Visit MHP is another one. ICHARS has its own community of people that we work with. So be on a lookout for communities like these. You will get to interact with a lot of these people who are psychologists, who are practitioners, who are going through the same sort of challenge that you are going through, and they will understand you better. Right? Finally, if you are a therapist struggling with these challenges, please be open to visit another therapist. If you're expecting clients to come to you because they feel a lack of belongingness, Why wouldn't you want to go and seek help from other therapists? So these are long and short of what my views upon this is. And it's a bit of a long answer. There was a bit of a rant involved in this, but that's because it's important to bring it to all of your awareness of where we are, what we are doing, and what we need to do going forward, in my limited opinion.
That was our last.
Okay. Shruti, anything else that you would like to
Thank you
add?
so much for attending our YouTube live session.
Um, I think nothing more to add, but of course, keeping in mind that the need to belong is becoming such a big thing in today's world, because I think, like they're also saying, loneliness could be the next epidemic. Uh, it's of course a feeling at the end of the day. It's important to feel it. It's important to understand why we are feeling that, to understand what you can do from your end at least. Let's not feel shame for feeling that. Let's find more safer spaces to have conversations where we think we can open up about it. And hopefully, with time, we might feel a little better. And it's again about feeling better, it's also about getting better. Again, keeping in mind that we have to be patient. We can't expect that, okay, if I'm feeling like this, I don't want to feel like this tomorrow. Maybe the feeling will come and go, it will fade. On some days it will stay, it will be a large thing on other days. So to embrace it first as much as possible, but at the same time to know that it's possible to go on the other side if we also put in efforts from our end, if we put ourselves out there in the form of maybe being a part of communities also. So thank you for this conversation, Nitin. I think it was wonderful to hear your thoughts, also to hear your insights. There's so much I'm taking back with me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Disha, for hosting both of us, for asking those questions.
Yes,
Um,
thank you, Disha.
we are planning to have a weekly conversation like this. Every Wednesday, we have a conversation at the same time with different set of people. Generally, alternate weeks. One is with Connected, and then one is with Emoticons. Uh, if you have any ideas about topics that you would like us to discuss, please drop it in the comments in the chat box, and I will be more than happy to look at what are the next topics that we can explore and we can work with. But thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, for being a part of this conversation, and I'm looking forward to interacting with as many of you as I can. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye bye, everyone. Thank you.